You don't have to be a Poke fan to like it. You might have to be a Poke fan to like the label, but
that is true.
Everybody will love the juice. I'll tell you that.
Hi, and welcome to the Liquor Connoisseur. I'm Crystal.
I'm Roger.
Today we'll be reviewing Hochatown Distilling Company's Loyal and True Reserve Bourbon. This bourbon is made of 80% corn, 10% rye, 10% malted barley. It is a blend of 3- and 4-year-old bourbons. This is part of a trilogy series.
Yeah.
This is actually the second release. It is celebrating 125 years of OSU football or Cowboy football.
Yep.
And last year's release celebrated the year of the Cowboy. So I'm curious what next year's release will be.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a good offering. I like the presentation. I love their bottles in general. 50%. So yeah, this is going to be probably closer in line to the bottle and bond expression because it's got a little bit of 3- and 4-year in there. So yeah.
And this was a real fun thing to know about. You know, it's a collector series. So 3 years is the second label. It's all the same juice.
Yeah.
And they just change the label each year. What was fun about learning about this bottle is that we were invited by Hochatown to their Loyal and True Reserve bourbon tasting that featured Fred Minnick.
That was fun.
It was an amazing time. Thank you so much, Hochatown, for inviting us.
Thank you.
It was great to hear Blue speak more about Hochatown and its beginnings, Oklahoma's beginnings as a state and prohibition. And Fred actually walked us through the tasting. So we want to show you all some clips from that today. Oh, that sounds beautiful.
I know, right? Doesn't it sound fun?
Just threw me off there.
Yeah, I figured I'd just...
There's no better sound.
Yeah.
And what we want to show are clips from this event so you all feel like you were there and let you all experience firsthand a Fred Minnick tasting.
Oh, yeah.
And then while Fred's going through that, we'll also talk to you about what we learned and taste this with you.
Oh, yeah, man. Sorry, it's just, it's so good.
Is it?
Uh-huh, yeah. Well, you know, I've had this one before, very recently. So.
It was a great night, and it also raised money for the school with an auction of 2 signed bottles of the Loyal and True Reserve by Blue and Fred Minnick.
Yeah. We didn't get those.
No,
we did not get those.
It was above us.
It was nice. They were able to get some nice coin for those.
Yes.
All for the school. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
That's really cool.
One of the things that stood out, we talked to Blue back in May of this year and got a lot of history from him. And it was just one of the things he talked about was how Oklahoma is a prohibition state, how it's written into our Constitution.
And by the way, we're still the only agriculture product in the state of Oklahoma that you can't sell directly to the customer that you may get. But it's all wrapped up in the way Oklahoma come out of the Constitution and things that were left in the Constitution. And Oklahoma, people look and go, y'all have alcohol in your Constitution in Oklahoma? And I'm like, yeah, it's a prohibition state. So prohibition movement was strong.
And they talked more about how we were in prohibition until 1959, despite prohibition ending in the 30s.
That's sad.
We're still catching up from that time. But they talked about how, because it's written to our Constitution, they haven't fully taken a lot of that out. They've just kind of added to or...
Yeah, the laws on the books, they don't just die and go away. You have to wrestle and fight hard to remove them or have them adjusted.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Fred also talked about why we had prohibition in the Constitution. I thought that was neat.
I do want to touch on one little thing about why the prohibition was in place here. So a little bit about why Oklahoma had a lot of prohibition stuff here is we were Indian territory, right? And that in the 1800s, there were whiskey sales reps, whiskey salesmen, and rectifiers who sold poison with the label of whiskey to tribes, and it would kill a lot of Native Americans. And a lot of times there would be retribution punishment to villages after some people had died or someone was overly intoxicated. And so the federal government actually banned selling to Indian tribes. And that carried over into when we became a territory, to when we became a state, all the way to 1959. And one of the things that you will find if you ever study alcohol laws, which, believe me, that's a fun read on a Tuesday night, you will find out that the laws don't come off the books.
Fred Minnick is well known within the whiskey community.
Mm-hmm.
He's written several books, and he dives deep into spirit education.
Before I became a professional in this space, I was a drinker, and a drinker versus a taster is exactly what you think, So what I teach people is to taste, not to drink. And I do have a belief too that we have a lot of problems with alcoholism in this country because we never actually teach people how to taste or how to appreciate alcohol. All we have is, we have people doing shots instead of sipping wine with dinner. We don't talk about that, and I think it's a real issue. And also, when it comes to the history of what this is, whiskey helped build this country. Yet you don't see it in one single history book in any curriculum.
We scratched the surface in comparison.
Yeah.
And so it was good to hear from him. Again, this event was such an experience. It was a very intimate setting. Not a whole lot of people, but enough to where you could feel the warmth. And everyone was intrigued to hear Blue's story.
Yeah.
And hear Fred go through the tasting. It was very interactive and just amazing.
Yeah, they made some wonderful drinks. Of course,
Yes.
we kind of stuck with this, but they had old fashions available. Beautiful OSU ice cubes stamped out. It was a nice presentation.
And the event
Good food.
was actually held in the suites at the OSU Stadium or Cowboy Stadium. Sorry, I'm learning how to use their language. I'm an OU alumni.
Yeah.
This is not easy for me.
Yeah. But she did good with her bias. She even wore a little bit of orange, if you notice in some of the photos, just a little bit of orange. And that's going to be fun during Thanksgiving when we talk about that with the family.
But we just had a wonderful time. It was a beautiful stadium. The suites were very nice. The view of the stadium was amazing.
Oh, yeah. It was top tier.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was really good.
It set the tone for the experience we were going to have that night. And just going back to some of the things we learned, the importance of water. We've stressed that in several episodes with you all. It was great to hear Blue talk about the water in Hochatown, how great it is, and the difference between it and the limestone Kentucky.
One of the big things about distillation is the water. Now, I've always said that the water in Oklahoma was good. The water in Kentucky is great. But you said that the water that you have access to in your area is better than most of the state. Talk about that.
Well, we're down in far southeast Oklahoma, so if anybody's ever been down to Broken Bow Lake, Mountain Fork River, the water we get comes out of Mountain Fork River. It's spring fed and runoff in the river there. There's no municipalities upstream, and so we just get a real high grade of water. We do run it through a reverse osmosis, just trying to, if there's any iron present, to get that out. But what we do is recognizing, and Fred touched on it just a minute ago, that the quality of Kentucky water, and it's limestone filtered. So we were like, well, what makes it so great? And through just mentioning our study and looking at it, the limestone will help grab if there's any iron there, but it also puts nutrients that the yeast like, calcium and magnesium, so some of those nutrients. So we add in those back into our water through it and adjust the pH on it before when we're doing our final mash.
Okay, so y'all, we're getting geeky here. I apologize for this.
Yeah.
I thought that was really neat to hear those differences and to again discuss why all these whiskeys taste different. It's the grain, it's the water, it's a combination of multiple things.
The climate.
Oh,
you got
yeah.
to talking about
You
the
talked
aging
about that
process in
climate.
Hochatown.
That angel share.
Yeah.
Well, the question was, how does the weather affect our aging process? And one thing you got to know about Oklahoma is we have 7 different temperate zones in Oklahoma. Well, and which affects how the whiskey is aged. Where we're at in southeast Oklahoma, if you look at average annual precipitation, where we're at there at Beavers Bend and Broken Bow Lake, that is the wettest part of the state. And one thing, kind of base it on where pine trees grow, you have a lot more average annual rainfall. It takes so much rainfall. So when you travel down in the southeastern part of the state and you start getting in the pine trees, then you're starting to get into those areas that have a lot higher humidity. So the weather is affecting it. There are three ways as well. Look at it. There's heat. Heat drives oxidation reactions that mellow out the bourbons and the sugars and tannins that you're pulling out of the barrel. Those oxidize and break down. And then the humidity controls how much bourbon is moving out of your barrel versus to the ambient humidity, what your average annual ambient humidity is. The greater the difference or the delta between those two is, the more angel share loss you're going to get. One of the things you have to think about in climates that are hot, they're usually arid, so they're dry. And what this really affects is the economics of your barrel. If you're losing 5% per year angel share in your barrel versus losing 12% in your per year, then you're having to age it 4 years. That's a significant amount of bourbon that you lose, and you still have to generate a certain amount of volume out of that barrel of bourbon, and you don't have as much bourbon, so your price points are higher. So if you're not careful, you price yourself out of the market. And then one of the unique things that we have is the 4 seasons. We have 4 unique seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. And those seasons, I call it, from lack of a better term, it creates a mechanical action. And that mechanical action is swelling that bourbon and contracting that bourbon and pulling those tannins out and blending that in and then going back into the barrel. So it's a mechanical action of getting a lot of movement in and out of the barrel. So when you couple those things together and get a good, clean distillation, then you can start talking about having a decent bourbon at 3 years old from batch distillation versus continuous distillation. And those were some of the thought things that we put in about how we were very pleased with how we can age out the bourbons in a natural way, but still offer a lot of ability of the bourbon to age out.
The humidity down there is high enough that they don't get the same amount of loss as even if you compare it to Texas.
Oof.
For instance, it's
Man.
leaps and bounds ahead. So,
And what's been
good.
so cool that Hochatown has done is they don't source their whiskey. They make their own. They started this company and waited
yeah,
until their whiskey had matured to
which is
produce
the
it.
hardest
Yes.
way to go about. They went about it the
Yes.
toughest way.
Yes, yes. And I mean, Blue talked about how, he had another business, property management, that helped fund Hochatown. But what has really helped with its growth is partnerships like this with OSU.
Yeah.
They also have North Texas, I believe also University of Tulsa, and of course, Thunder Vodka.
Yeah.
So it's been nice hearing how these partnerships help propel them further into the market.
But when the OSU 100 Years launched, our name recognition in liquor stores went from very low to very high. So suddenly, all of a sudden, everybody knows about us. And to answer Fred's question, one of the things we do is, rather than selling part of the company right now, or rather than getting in with a bank and dealing with that to grow, we started working on these partnerships, and that's the pace and what's
That's
going to
awesome.
fuel And just right now, this spring, we got a 500-gallon still coming in.
All
We're
right.
building a new barn so I can have another aging barn. And we're buying 10 acres right down the road that we can put a new, bigger, more modern distillery on.
I thought that was really neat as to how they're getting their name out. And, you know, like I said, we're going to taste this with you as we walk through with Fred.
So our journey of tasting this bourbon will begin by analyzing the color. When the whiskey went into the barrel, it was clear as the water from your tap. So it doesn't come off the still looking like this. Every single day it's in that barrel, it's moving in and out of that wood, extracting all of that color. And so looking at color tells us how well it did in the barrel. Sometimes. The darker it is usually means the older it is and higher the proof. So I kind of like akin this to like an album cover. You can look at an album cover, it gives you an idea of the music that you're about to listen to, right? Gives you an idea whether or not you might like it. Or it can oversell it, or it can undersell it. But it's not going to actually give you the impression on the music. It just kind of gives you a teaser. So the color is kind of a teaser of what you're about to expect. Swirled around, you want to kind of push that bouquet up. So what you're doing here, when you swirl it around, you know, in wine, they talk about looking at the legs. Wine is not distilled. Wine is just fermented. And the yeast is still slightly active. And the sides, the legs, that's the residual sugars in wine. In bourbon, or spirits, all spirits, that is the leftover fatty acids and lipids from the fermentation, distillation, and aging. And also, sometimes the congeners from the barrel can have an impact on the legs. We don't really judge those. It's more of an observational thing. So you swirl it around, bring it to your nose, kind of just have it right there. And when you smell any type of spirit, this is very important because, you know, most people aren't going around smelling spirit all the time. It can send your nose hairs if you're not ready. So open your mouth slightly, okay? So just a little bit. And what this does is this relaxes your olfactory. It allows you to kind of cycle in a little easier. And then you want to go side by side because your nostrils actually do not work in unison. They cycle through. So you're going to notice one nostril will pick up maybe a sweet flavor, and another nostril might pick up kind of like a spiciness, but they're very different. Now, the reason why we should smell alcohol always is because you can go anywhere in the world right now, and there's a chance that you might actually buy fake alcohol. Every now and then you'll see in the news that there is someone dying from drinking fake alcohol in a minibar at a resort somewhere. Happens a lot lately. But anyway, so after we kind of determine that this isn't going to make your tongue numb, you want to put it in like a category. Is this sweet? Is this oaky? Is this earthy? Is it spicy? Is it floral? Is it fruity? And from there, you go down even further. So just to raise a hand, who thinks this smells sweet? Who thinks this smells fruity? Anyone think it smells spicy? Earthy? Oaky? Did I say floral? Did I say floral again? Floral. Who thinks it smells like bourbon? There we go. All right. All right, so what we would normally do in like an analytical setting is that we would then break it down even further. And so those are very broad categories that we would start dissecting even further. Now, this is the part that I was telling Larry about earlier about my taste mindfulness exercise. I'm about to teach it to you. And this is the exercise I was telling you all that helped build me to what I am and really in part saved my life. So, when we taste things, we have a memory locked in here. And the taste part of our brain is right next to the event sector, the memories of things that have happened in our lives. And so a lot of times when you read my tasting notes or see one of my reviews, I'll say, tastes like grandma's apple pie. It's because I have a connection to that in my brain that's very prominent. We all have something we grew up with that we love, and anytime we smell it or we taste it, we remember it exactly where we were in that wonderful moment. Just like when we were in college and we had too much tequila and we remember the other side. How many people can't drink tequila anymore? Right? It's the same thing, but we're trying to look for the good, not the bad. But when we taste alcohol, our tongue doesn't necessarily have that same experience. So what I'd like to do is try to train you to be able to pick up those same kind of memory banks of flavors instead of just going to Murphy's and chugging a beer and then going, wherever you go next. So you have 5 basic quadrants for your tongue when it comes to tasting whiskey. The tip of your tongue, the middle toward the back, all the way in the back, and the sides. So what I'd like you to do, put about a thimble-sized amount. We're not back on a fraternity party. I'm looking at you. What's your name? Ann? All right. I saw you were about to kick it back. Were you a 5U? No? All right. Was she going to kick it back? She totally was. I knew it. So just put a thimble-sized amount on your tongue and see what part of the tongue you feel it most prominently. Here we go. Now, we're not talking about flavors yet. We're just focusing on our tongue. Who feels it on the tip of the tongue? Who feels it on the middle? Middle toward the back? All the way in the back? Who feels it on their sides? Who feels it on their belly? That's the hug.
What about your throat?
The throat? You do have taste receptors in your throat. So now what I'd like you to do is think about that part of the tongue that you felt it most prominently, okay? And this is the part of taste mindfulness, part of connecting your brain to your palate. Think about the part of the tongue. For those who felt it on the tip of your tongue, just focus on that part of the tongue you felt it. In the middle, just focus on the middle part. So taste again, just put a little bit on your tongue, not a whole shot, and focus on that part of the tongue. And let's see if a flavor pops up. I want to start with blue. Where'd you feel it, blue?
Well, I get it on the tip of the tongue. And I get a sweetness. I get a little bit of caramel and cinnamon.
Okay. I get cinnamon in the back of my tongue. That's the thing about this. All of our tongues are differently. They all work differently. Just like we're athletically different, we taste differently. You remember that diagram of a tongue that they said this is where you get your sour and your sweet and all that? You remember that in high school? This is a biology class. That's been largely debunked. We have found that everybody's taste receptors are unique to them. And this is something that has become very prominently studied since COVID, because half of us lost our ability to taste and smell, right? Some people never got it back. So there's been a lot of effort to study this. I've actually been working with some physicians on taste receptors and finding, being able to narrow down certain patterns with people who taste prominently. Anyway, for those who felt it on the tip of the tongue, anybody want to say what they tasted? Anybody got a note they want to call out from the tip of the tongue? Did I hear cinnamon? Say cinnamon?
Yeah.
Okay. In the middle, anyone want to call out a note that they felt in the middle of their palate?
Cinnamon and pepper.
You got cinnamon and pepper there. See, we have 2 people here, both tasting cinnamon, different parts of their tongue. I also get cinnamon on this, but it's in the back of my tongue. Isn't that amazing? And that's so unique. And this sounds like it's a bunch of BS for those who are not actually participating in it. Like if someone were just watching this, we're like, this guy's full of shit. But if you sit down and experience it, and you sit and you taste next to someone, you see how differently our palates work, you can begin to understand how yours works. All right, anyone who felt it on the back of the tongue want to call out a no? Clove? I like that no. Like a Jamaican jerk chicken. I love Jamaican jerk chicken. Good stuff. Okay, anybody feel it on the sides of their tongue? Want to say anything? Go ahead. Fruit? Back there? A lot of spicy stuff on the sides of your tongue? Okay. Now, I want you, like, when you get a chance to taste again, you can map your tongue out. I know you're not going to do this when you go home, but try other bourbons, sit down, and make a map of where you feel things on your tongue. And that's how I've trained myself over 20 years. Now, the last piece of that, who still feels the whiskey on their palate? That's the finish. And to me, the finish is the most important part of tasting whiskey.
This nose is amazing.
I do like that he brought up, the nosing with the mouth slightly open. This is definitely an expert tip.
And taking the glass from left nostril to right.
Correct.
Something we talked about with Dwayne Poor.
Mm-hmm.
Because your nostrils are not the same.
Yep. And when you try it, you're like, oh, it is different. That's cool. But of course, watching people do it and you're not actually trying it, you're like, that sounds like a bunch of, just try it. Give it a go.
Yeah.
Glassware matters. The whole process, it makes a difference.
Yeah. So these Glencairns, which we also used that night,
Mm-hmm.
that tulip shape. And then the other thing is that swirl. That swirl was fun.
Yeah. He put the swirl on it, check for color. Just a classic walkthrough. It was nice.
It was. It really was. And just the way he taught us about our sense of taste.
Mm.
Where are you feeling that? Just take a little bit, put it on your tongue.
Yeah.
Where do you feel the notes? What notes do you feel?
And I definitely learned something different on that note. With the places on the tongue, I thought that was pretty rock solid, solidified, and undisputed. But apparently there's been some pushback lately about that. And the tip of your tongue is not necessarily the sweet part or whatever it was. Because I know growing up in school, they was like, yeah, this part is where you get all your sweet stuff. This is a sour, salty.
Yeah.
It can be different for everyone.
So Fred Minnick is doing some amazing stuff, it sounds like, with scientists to debunk this.
Yeah, that's great.
That was really fun to note. I'm just trying to think what else we learned that night. Like Fred, as you're seeing, he went deep into educating us on the proper way to taste and have an experience with spirits.
Yeah, he talked about the good old days of drinking bad things. Boone's Farm, for instance. And how that can go. And really have a lasting memory.
Yes. Yes. And, he mentioned about, he doesn't like to talk about other spirits, but according to him, vodka sucks.
According to him. I disagree.
But, he talked about how our experiences shape how we feel about alcohol. And he even asked people, how many of you today can't drink tequila?
Yeah.
Which I laughed so hard because I love tequila. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can't drink that since college. I'm like, but it's not the same tequila.
Yeah, there's a big difference. And I'm sure if we were to ask him, there are certain whiskeys that he would frown at too. And many of them probably come in plastic bottles. But if that is your experience with tequila, vodka, or any of these other spirits, it is time to step away from those particular brands and look somewhere else. And so that can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, man, let's do this. Cheers.
So as Fred mentioned, First taste, coat the palate. Put a little bit on your tongue. See what notes you get.
Yeah.
I believe people got notes of clove, cinnamon. Blue mentioned caramel.
Yep.
I definitely get the corn. But I get a little nuttiness.
Yeah. I usually get a slight praline type of note, pecanish.
Okay.
And this, I mean, you're pretty much getting an allspice vibe on it. I know we've had this conversation before where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting some cinnamon, some nutmeg, clove. Wait a minute. Those are kind of in line with an allspice type of a vibe. And the cinnamon is a little bit louder, but with the corn, you get that creamy mouthfeel, and it's just smooth. So,
and it lingers. It has a nice finish.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you feel all warm inside.
Yeah, you do get a hug. Nice little hug.
Which was mentioned in the tasting.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is 100 proof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good sipper. I'm kind of partial to that one. If you can see it behind me. But it's not better than this. This is a little bit.
And he's referring to the moonshine we turned into bourbon.
Yeah.
Through Hochatown's barrel aging home kit.
Correct. Still all their same stuff. I'm just
Yes.
taking credit for some of the resting time. Just a little bit of the resting.
It was 8 weeks.
Yeah, it just chilled out.
This is aged no less than 3 years.
Yeah.
A blend of 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, this is some great stuff here. It really is.
What I thought was great, and Blue talked about this, Blue was asked this: how do they keep the color the same? Because in bourbon, you can't add coloring. It is illegal.
Correct.
To add coloring. And, hear what Blue had to say about how Hochatown does consistency with color.
How do you control the color? How do you create consistency in the color? You don't know what's going to come out of the barrel.
I can answer. Here's what we do, okay? So when we do our distillations, we will put our distillate and blend several distillates, 8, 10, 12 distillates together before we go into a barrel. When we go into a barrel, we'll fill the barrel, and we'll fill, 5 barrels out of that, and then we put them away and do it real small. It's a small scale, but our goal here is to cross blend a lot. And then when we get ready to do our bourbon blends, when we taste our bourbon and check them, then we will blend 10 barrels in a small batch. And so you could, like one of these is a combination of a couple of different aged bourbons, and you can have, in that one right there, you could have 15 different barrels and somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 distillations that are all part of what makes that bourbon. So by cross blending it like that, it's from the same year and made at the same time, and it's the same mash bills. But by referencing those blends together, it helps you get a more consistent, even product on the end.
It's a very old school Seagram's technique, actually, Canadian whiskey.
Hearing all how they blend, that to me has got to be a special science.
Oh, yeah.
To know what barrels to pick, how much of what, proofing them down.
Well, to their credit, Hochatown Distilling, from the beginning, they had a leg up when it comes to the math and the science of all this. I mean, with Blue having an engineering background and his brother being a chemist, it goes a long way with this type of trial and error. So
yeah, Blue and Mitch definitely a pair. Yeah, this is good. You just want to keep sipping, and it's fall.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, and good to tailgate with.
Oh yeah.
Man,
I can kind of rock with this, and we did. We had
a couple of
few pours of this, and night was good.
It was.
I had
really
a
good.
great time. Met some wonderful people.
Yeah, and the price point for this is about 101 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
If you can find the first year, you can reserve this one and start your collection with next year being the last of the series. I believe they had a 3-year deal with OSU, so I think they're looking to possibly extend that.
Yeah.
And then I know Fred was asking about having an OSU barrel pick, and I think Blue said that could be 6-7 years old.
Now that would be really cool. So I'm pretty sure they'll want to renew just for the possibility of that happening, because I'd like to see what Hochatown's 7-year expression is going to be like.
Oh man, put us on the list, please.
Sign me up.
Save us a bottle.
Yeah. We'll come see you.
And honestly, again, expanding their brand through these partnerships. Blue had mentioned they're expanding. They're going to get a bigger still, and buying some other property in the area to expand their mark and do some other cool things in the future.
Well, it'll be fun next time we go down there.
It will be. And if you would like to purchase a bottle, you can actually now purchase directly from Hochatown Distilling. You can reserve your bottle on their website, or if you're in Oklahoma, check your local liquor store. We actually purchased ours. We didn't get to purchase at the event. We purchased ours from Mark Waits at Stillwater Wine and Spirits Warehouse.
They have a wonderful selection.
Very good selection.
Some of the little short films I make with the little bottles comes from there. So they have a great selection.
Yes,
all kinds
our Shot
of
With Me
things.
series has featured them several times.
Yeah, several times.
We'll have a new one coming out soon.
Yeah. I was actually happy to meet him. I was like, oh, new owner? All right.
Yeah,
Nice
he was
selection.
excited to meet us.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you guys coming? Yeah, we'll be there shortly. So we went straight over there right after the event. I was like, and picked up some other stuff too that you will see soon.
We did. Roger pushed me out of the store, so I didn't pick up anything else.
Yeah, I was like, hey, we gotta go. We have to go.
But again, Hochatown Reserve on their website. They can now ship to 41 states.
Awesome.
Ironically, Oklahoma is not one of them.
Yeah, that would only make sense for us to not be one of them. Wow.
We could just go to our local liquor store and pick it up. Or take a vacation down to Broken Bow, stay at one of their properties so we can make sure we continue to get more Hochatown.
Yeah. I like the tour. The tasting was wonderful.
Oh, Rod was
Rod,
great.
10 out of 10. Love him. And actually there was a gentleman at the event that spoke highly of Rod too. Had been to a tasting, was like, yeah, they had a really great setup, very professional, and that guy knows his stuff. So when you do go to Hochatown and you try out some of their expressions, tell Rob we said hello.
Yeah, and Hochatown's a great place. If you want to know more about that water, they have a couple of great lakes there.
Yeah.
And it's just an experience. It's a great getaway to relax, stay in the cabins, and experience.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm about to work my way through this one.
Well, before you finish,
Oh, yeah.
I would like to rate this at an expert level.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to for something like this. I mean, it's pretty well complex, smooth.
That color is
very
beautiful.
versatile. You can make some mean cocktails with it. You can pour it up neat, gift worthy. If any of the Poke fans out here, if you don't have this, just hurry up and go get it, because I mean, you should. It will look great in your bar. It even has all the OSU stuff on the back. And so, yeah, you'll appreciate the bottle spin. You might even want to save that just because you like OSU. So,
and you don't have to be a Poke fan.
You don't have to be a Poke fan.
like it.
You don't have to be a Poke fan to like it. You might have to be a Poke fan to like the label, but
that is true.
Everybody will love the juice. I'll tell you that.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Hope you enjoyed this experience with Blue and Fred Minnick and the Loyal and True Reserve tasting. All right. As always, drink to remember, not to forget, and like, subscribe, and share.
Cheers.
Cheers.